Thank you so much to Pearson for your support of the conference and of adult learning and those who work with adult learners. We sincerely appreciate your support and your presence here at our conference. And definitely, folks, be sure to visit Pearson's in the Pearson booth in the vendor area and the exhibition hall, and also our other fine vendors as well. Well, I want to welcome you to today's meeting. This is the State Directors and State Association Leaders meeting. This is an annual tradition that we have at the COABE conference, and in our role as a convener of interested parties in adult education, this is a meeting that we value tremendously. This is an opportunity really for folks to hear from from those in leadership at the state level and also at the association level. And in particular, today's theme really is going to be looking at how the state associations and the state directors and state leadership really work together, and some fine examples of how they work together. We would not be able to bring this to you without our friends at NASDAE, the National Association for State Directors of Adult Education. And we are very pleased and honored to have the executive director of the National Association, Pat Tyler. So Pat, thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to hand this over to you.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, COABE, for this opportunity. We're really delighted to be able to highlight the work that we do along with the work that COABE does, and to talk a little bit about how we can pull it all together and work together. So NASDAE exists to provide support to state directors of adult education and their staff members. And we have several priorities in that. So I think we have the next slide that shows just three of the main things that we do. And we are providing professional development for our state directors and their staff members. We do that through our National Training Institute. That is our annual event, our large annual event that occurs in the fall of every year, designed to provide training for the implementation of the adult ed program, the statewide adult ed program. We also provide leadership forum topics, and these come to us from our member states. And we have a direct line to the state directors because our board of directors is composed entirely of state directors from the various states who are elected by their colleagues. So the topics and the needs come to us directly from the state directors, and we try to provide whatever is needed in terms of the support that they require to implement their program. We are working with links now. We have a NASDAE State Leaders discussion group, which is just for the state directors and their key staff members to share resources. We are going to be rolling out in the fall a new leadership development training that we've been working on with AIR, who are the primary developers of the content. So we hope to be able to provide you more details about that in the very, very near future. So resource sharing and networking is another very important thing that we do. And some of the issues that we've been dealing with in the very recent past are distance education. How do we make that pivot successfully? And virtual orientation and assessment, but those are just some of the issues. And again, you know, whatever is the need of the state directors and for state implementation is what we try to provide. Public information and dissemination. We've done some issue briefs, some fact sheets with a profile of adult education, and we provide government information. So what we're trying to do is to put out some information for the general public and also for specific audiences that help them to understand who our population is, what our participation rates are, and what are our outcomes and our potential to make a great impact. We have highlighted recently, especially the need for adult education services, which is something that we hope, you know, gets the word out of how important all your work is. And we're really, really happy to be here today and to promote the idea of state directors of adult education working with their state associations. Associations can do much of the things that we as state directors cannot do. So with that, I want to turn it over to our elected chairperson for NASDAE, Cheryl Hart, who's also state director in Arizona.
Thank you, Pat. Good afternoon, everyone. So as Pat said, my name is Cheryl Hart. I'm the current NASDAE chair, and I'm just beginning my second year of a 2-year term. I'm also the Arizona State Director. The only thing I wanted to add to what Pat said is that on a personal note, being on the NASDAE board has been probably the most outstanding and important professional learning experience for me as a state director. So any of you that are state directors that are on here, you know that we don't have any peers in our own state that we can interact with. So the opportunity to serve on the NASDAE board and interact with peers from other states has been extremely valuable, both to me personally and to my state office. Also very valuable for me in this role has been the opportunity to interact with COABE on an entirely different level as the NASDAE chair. And that collaboration with COABE has been extremely important because, as Pat said, there are things that we can do in NASDAE, and then there are things that COABE can do that NASDAE cannot do. And so our relationship together is extremely important, and the way that we work together to support each other in our areas of strength has been very valuable. So I'm going to, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon Bonney, the Chief Executive Officer of COABE, and let her go through COABE's priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Pat, as well. So I would just like to mention that we've truly enjoyed the partnership with NASDAE as well, and we feel that it's really in the best interest of the field for state directors and state association leaders to be working well together, and so we've tried to model that at the national level. COABE is the consortium that's the resource for state associations and that provides benefits for state leaders. And I'm going to turn this over to Regina Soot in just a minute to talk about that. Regina is our new Vice President for membership, and she brings so much to the table. But before I do that, I want to mention that many of the resources she's going to talk about can also be found on the webpage for this session. So we put a number of resources out there, as did NASDAE, as did our other partners that we'll be hearing from a little bit later during this presentation. So just want to encourage you to go out there and check that out. You'll see those resources mentioned there. So without further ado, I want to turn this over to Regina Soot. Regina?
Thanks, Sharon. So I'm very excited to get started this year as the new Vice President for membership for COABE. And I've always really appreciated what COABE has to offer for state associations, but not just state associations. I know that's who is in the audience today, but states without associations, those state leaders that might not have that support. COABE can help all of you. But specifically the state association benefits that COABE is able to offer. Many of you I know as state director or state association presidents and vice presidents and board members are volunteers. And so COABE is able to offer that kind of director and officer liability insurance that you might need. We also have retooled our awards process to take what you're already doing in your state and making it easy for you to transfer your already great state award winners into an easier process to be eligible for the big COABE awards. We're also able to help with virtual conferences, and when you attend a COABE virtual conference like the one we had last year, the state association can buy a membership for everyone in the state, so much cheaper. We also offer a state advocacy plugin that kind of goes into our Educate and Elevate page, so that if you have specific targeted advocacy issues in your state, we can help you with that plugin. But we can also help you by, directing you to resources, maybe connecting you to other states who've had the same issues. We really want to be that convener to help state associations get through whatever pain points you might be suffering. The COABE also has the award-winning ambassador program, which helps train students to advocate for adult education, but also your local and state needs. I already mentioned that the Educate and Elevate page to help with federal advocacy efforts, and you'll hear more about that later. But COABE has also developed, with the help of those in the field, state data fact sheets so that you can pull that the data about your state for your advocacy efforts or your awareness building efforts. We also give membership support and website support and guidance at no additional cost when you're a state association member. And then don't forget too that COABE offers a great institutional or regional institute grant funding. So if you're on one side of the country, when the COABE conference is on the other, we support regional conferences so that more people can get professional development in closer to home. And then, of course, we want to make sure you understand that you can enroll all your state association members and adult learners. As a student engagement chair for the last couple of years, we are always looking at ways to engage learners. And if you put them into your state association as members, then they become COABE members as well. The way that we do all of this is through your board. And if you want to go to the next slide, Sharon. So I want to make sure that you understand that the way we connect with all of you is through our regional reps. So we've just recently redesigned and changed some of the states. So make sure you see which region you are in. And then I encourage you to come to the regional meetings on July 9th. They're starting with Region 1, going all the way to Region 6 throughout the day. You should be able to go onto your COABE app and find exactly which meeting to go to. You can see on this map the states that go to each region. And so I would encourage you to connect with your regional reps. They want to hear from you. They want to hear if you have issues or if you have PD needs outside of the classroom. Do you, as a state association, need something, and COABE wants to be there to help you with those pain points. So I know you've already talked to Cheryl, but it's now my pleasure to introduce kind of a spotlight on an excellent relationship that Arizona has with the state association, the Arizona Association for Lifelong Learning. So Cheryl and Laura Porfirio, who is the president of all right now, are going to talk about their great successes and the way they work with their relationship. So thank you.
Thank you, Regina. So again, this is Cheryl Hart. I'm the state director for Arizona, and I'm here with Laura Porfirio, who is the president of our state association in Arizona, and that's the Arizona Association for Lifelong Learning. So I guess I'm going to start off with talking about our relationship from my perspective at the state office, and you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I'll start with my perspective, and then I'll turn it over to Laura and let her talk. So I want to start by just explaining that all Arizona Association for Lifelong Learning has a really long history. It goes back, it precedes me actually even being in Arizona, and I've been here for 25 years now. But when I first did become a local director in 1998 through 2002, I served on the all board as a local director. So I came into the state office with a pretty good understanding of what all was able to do and what their purpose was. When I came to the state office, I was asked to be a liaison by the state director at that time, which some of you, I don't know if you know, Karen Learsh was the state director in Arizona who preceded me, but she made me a liaison with the association. So that meant I attended the meetings. I was like a non-voting member on the board, but I did interact with the board, and I represented the state office and basically supported the association back in the state office. And so I think that relationship that my predecessor established with the state association has proven to be very valuable, and I've continued that on as state director. We do have a liaison. When Laura and I were meeting and talking about this presentation, we were talking about it feels like a Venn diagram would be the best way to describe what's going on. And I have to say, we put this together in probably less than 20 minutes because it was super easy for us. We've talked about together the things that we can do at the state office, and that's over on the right-hand side in the red circle. What we do at the state office compared to what the association can do on the left-hand side in the orangey yellow oval. And then of course there's the things in between. So in the state office, first I should tell you that we are housed, adult education is housed at the Arizona Department of Education in Arizona. And it is a very, very strong edict from the Arizona Department of Education that I am not allowed to lobby, nor are any of my staff. Lobbying is not allowed in any way. And even the word advocacy gets a little, it gets a little gray. And so we are very careful that we have that solid line between what we can do in that arena. So while I can't lobby or even speak to legislators in my capacity, that's what makes my relationship with the state association important, because what I can do and what we do are all of the things that you see over there on the right-hand side. We work with our providers at the local level to ensure that we have strong programs, compliant under the law. We do oversight. We do a lot of technical assistance. We implement state leadership activities. We do professional learning, professional development. We evaluate, we monitor, we maintain an accountability system. All of those things, all of those are supports that help our local providers to run strong programs and serve the needs of the students. And then we also, what we can do is we can provide data, information, all of those things to our state association, and then they in turn can do what they need to do, what they are able to do that we aren't, which is strong advocacy and even lobbying. So I'm going to let Laura talk from her perspective now, and then I'll probably chime in with some more.
Yeah, hi, thanks. And after we talk about this overlap of what we do, we will get a chance on the next slide to talk about what makes it work, because this partnership really is good. We have so many common values and so many common goals. And one of the other things that Cheryl and I talked about is our history in Arizona of having some pretty major funding struggles. And those are the times when our relationship really got tight and was solidified. And of course, all of that is rooted in the fact that in Arizona, the adult ed system in Arizona has always really promoted, civics engagement. When I first stepped out of the classroom into a coordinator role, I was running a model program for Arizona. Not long after that, I got involved with all in the awareness committee. So you can, so that's what I wanted to kind of jump to is, it's easy to see how much overlap we have because we have all of these common goals of promoting communication and collaboration among this, network of adult educators in Arizona, so people don't feel isolated in their local programs. They're part of a bigger system, and with students at the center of everything we do, student voice, student leadership, and that's where all comes in and can do a lot more with that. I mean, we all has supported actually all in Arizona is the birthplace of the ambassador program that Sharon was talking about earlier. We train students and staff to be the voice and promote awareness and advocacy and really be advocates for adult ed, having students be those advocates. We have a really strong social media presence in Arizona. We are more and more getting more programs from all over the state to do the stuff they would normally do, which is spotlight their successes, spotlight their student stories and student successes. But the State Department can't really do that. So we have our really strong social media presence, and the network that we have, thanks to ADE and all of these educators and adult learners and adult learner leaders, that network can be the basis for really broad-based awareness raising, broad-based, even action when we need it, when we think it's strategically smart to do so, and make a big splash about adult ed in Arizona so that the public and elected officials and other leaders and our workforce partners and everybody knows why adult ed is so important to workforce in Arizona. We can do a lot more. Like, that's what Cheryl we kept reflecting on the other day was together we have the tools and we have the information, but through the all network we can really go deeper with awareness and advocacy. And again, we have a lot of really great stories to tell about Arizona adult ed at the local and state level having really successful advocacy efforts. Money has been allocated to new buildings in Tucson. Funding has been restored twice at the state level, not always because of a big, civic action, but sometimes because of strategic relationships that, all leaders can build with decision makers. So
And
it goes both ways.
Can I jump in there for a second?
Please.
So Laura mentioned funding restored. I just want to just share our story of when we lost our funding. So during the Great Recession, way back in 2008, 2009, our state budget was in dire needs. In fiscal year 2009, I believe it was about halfway through the year, our state funding was cut in half. And this was halfway through the year. So basically we were zeroed out for the second half of the year because we had already allocated the funding and it had been spent by local providers. The following year in FY 2010, we were completely zeroed out. We had no local budget, and that continued for 3 years. And during that time, and I'll tell you the reason why we were zeroed out, why we were targeted adult education, was because the Department of Ed put us on the list of non-essential programs. So in other words, we weren't formula funded, and so they put us on that non-essential, the non-essential list. So you can imagine we basically, with our own parent organization putting us on that list, we had no voice at the legislature. So we relied on our association 100% to get the message out. Now we could provide them with a lot of data, and so this was really a turning point, I think, in our relationship. We weren't focusing so much on just doing professional development together and that sort of thing, but it was a critical time for us at the state office to do what we needed to do to provide the information, and for the All Association to mobilize people, students, teachers, everyone in the field, and get a voice at the legislature. And they did that, and it took 3 years, but they got funding fully restored to the pre-recession level.
Thanks, Cheryl. Maybe we should go to the next slide. Cheryl, do you want to start us off on this, or should I?
I can start, and then
Okay.
I'll be pretty brief, and then let you talk. But I think that and I've already kind of said this a little bit. I asked Laura, I said, what's our secret sauce? What makes us work so well together? Well, we communicate constantly, and I really feel like the people that are in all and the people that are in the state office, we all have common goals where we want to do the best for our students. When I hire anyone at the state office, my biggest concern is not necessarily their skill level, but do they care about the students that they serve? Are they passionate about adult education? And I think that's the people that are involved in all have that at their focus. So we're all trying to do the same thing, and we also know that we can do it better together than if we're not working together. As I said, we have a liaison. ADE has a liaison on the all board. We are committed to having all staff at ADE have membership in all, even our front desk staff, the people that answer the phones and that sort of thing. They are members in all because they also understand that they play a role in the service that we provide to the students in Arizona. So Laura, I'm gonna let you say whatever else you want to say.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple more things. One thing, we have a increasing membership in our state association right now because the message is finally sinking in among all of the programs around Arizona that membership in all is a allowed professional learning expense. And how great, because we do so much together around professional learning and awareness and leadership development and training. So I'm really excited to be expanding our network right now as we speak. I'm also finding really good success very recently of making sure that there's a liaison from each program to be connected into our awareness committee. I'm going to keep saying awareness committee. We named it awareness committee a long time ago because even though we do have the freedom to do advocacy in Arizona, sometimes it's better to just leave it a little more broad because then we can do, marketing and publicity and spotlight our student stories and yes, do advocacy, really targeted advocacy. Just awareness is a better overall term for what we do. And so the only thing I was going to add is that we are constantly trying to be ready and build foundations and build relationships among ourselves in the system of adult ed, of leaders, like leaders from the ADE and leaders from the individual programs around Arizona. Always be ready for the next thing. We have used the Educate and Elevate state plugin tool, and we're always trying to expand our membership and expand our social media presence so that, if there is ever a time to get the word out broad-based, widely across Arizona about the importance of adult ed, we've got those collaborative networks in place and social media at the ready. So I think that's all I was going to add.
Okay, and then a closing remark before I turn it over to Indiana. I would say that in closing, we understand that if we are going to effectively tell our story, and we all know that we struggle with telling our story in adult education, if we're going to tell that story, we need each other. We need the state office and we need the association. And that's what makes it click to people. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Indiana and Marilyn Pizzulo, my colleague, state director in Indiana, and she's here with Jennifer Wigington. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Marilyn Pizzulo, and I am here today with, I am the state director for the state of Indiana, and I am here with Jennifer Wigington, who is the executive director for IEEE, and they are the membership organization in the state of Indiana. And if you'll give me just a second, I'm trying to turn on my video, but it is not letting me do that. So Jennifer, are you there?
I am here, Marilyn. I don't know why your video is not coming on. I was trying to do it for you as co-host and it wasn't working.
So go ahead and introduce yourself, Jennifer.
Well, I'm Jen Wigington, Jennifer Wigington. I've been called both. I have been working for IEEE for 2 years. Yes, 2 years this month. But I've been in the field of adult education for 12 or 13, and been a member of IEEE for all but 2 of those. I think when I first started, I didn't know about IEEE at the very beginning.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Can we get the next slide, please? So the story in Indiana is a little different from what you heard in Arizona. Back in the late 2000s, around 2009, in Indiana, adult education was moved from the Department of Education to the Indiana Department of Workforce Development. That was challenging times and a bit controversial, and IEEE actually lobbied against that transition back in the late 2000s. It was successfully completed, that transition was successfully completed by 2010, and that's about the time that I came on board, was with a whole new staffing for adult education at the state office, but there really was no relationship at that time between IEEE and the state office for these obvious reasons. I'm going to move it a little few years down the road, around the middle, about 2013, 2014. Well, during that time, during that initial time, both organizations operated independently. They, IEEE continued to have a conference. The state had a professional development conference annually. And there was, and I think justifiably, there was a lot of pull for our local providers between what conference do I attend? Do I attend both of them? Do my professional growth points count? What really should I be doing? And so back around 2013, 2014, we had a meeting of the minds between the executive director or the board president at IEEE and myself, and we did a little bit of design thinking on how we might make this relationship a little bit better, try and move past the issues of the past. And so what we started with was the liaison role, much like what Cheryl described in Arizona. And so we had liaisons that from the state office that would attend all of the board meetings for IEEE. I think through that, some trust was built, and eventually we got to the point where we decided that we would attempt to share and have one conference. And Jen, you want to talk a little bit about how that started, where that's gone, and where we are now with the joined conference?
Absolutely, Marilyn. I've been around long enough that I have been fortunate to see the before Marilyn and the beginning Marilyn, and the mid Marilyn, and the after Marilyn. So the next slide will show that whenever it comes to our conference, the solid base of the partnership is really funding. But it is so much more than that. We all know that conference planning is a big task, and it's hard to do it alone, but budgets are even worse. The partnership allows us to add quality to our sessions. For one, not only just our individual sessions with our peers, but the partnership also allows us to expand the technology for our presenters, They deliver quality and effective presentations because they have the ability to do more with the technology that we're able to provide them with the funding. But then it also includes keynotes. We have the ability to budget just a few more dollars to allow us to bring in keynotes that have normally probably been out of our price range. Partnering on the conference also has allowed us additional perspectives. The committee, it's helped us to gain collaborations and connections. It also has assisted us in building relationships with additional contacts, and that has allowed us to build up our sponsors and our exhibitors. The committee in general, with our liaison being there, has helped us spread out the work amongst everyone. That also expanded to this past year whenever we were unfortunate we could not hold our conference. The pandemic, yes. That didn't really stop us though, because with the partnership, we were allowed to continue our partnership, or allow us to offer that professional growth points with that partnership, allowing us to do some of the webinars this past month, them giving the PGP points for our members. So our professional development continued beyond just what the conference can do. This has also helped us connect with our advocacy efforts. Believe it or not, they partnered on a PIAC presentation where Jerry, the liaison that comes to our sessions, delivered the content at first, and then our advocacy committee took it over and developed a full-fledged presentation on how we can utilize that to advocate and basically spread our message. Marilyn, would you like to make a little connection there?
Yeah, Jen, absolutely. So historically, we finally now we're working together. We were doing some professional development. We were holding these conferences together. And then a really unfortunate thing happened in 2016. And similar to what Arizona mentioned, this didn't just impact our funding, however. In 2016, the legislature tried to write adult education completely out of state statute, eliminating anything that pertained to adult education. And as Cheryl has mentioned, advocacy and things of that nature are really out of my job description as the state director. But we had built enough trust with our partners at IAACE that we were able, from the state office, to go to IAACE, give them the heads up of what was going to be taking place, and also provide data and information that they could then run with to take off with advocacy and to help prevent this. And Jen's going to talk a little bit more about what they do in advocacy, but they were able to prevent us from being written out of statute. And we have been able to maintain our funding as a result of their efforts. Jen?
We wouldn't have been able to do that without that balance of the state offering that education for us, so that we could utilize that education to truly advocate for the things that are important to adult ed overall. It has helped us tremendously in being successful in our efforts. It really allowed us to create where no one entity or no one person had to do all the research and all the advocacy efforts and education on it. It balanced out where everyone came together. The efforts of our committee, along with our lobbyists, yes, Indiana does use a lobbyist, they have allowed us to pull off so many successes, including what is now known as Public Law 86. It is a high school equivalency pilot program to allow adult education providers to work with struggling high school students to prepare for the HSE exam. It was a long process. The committee and our state worked very hard on it. And we're very proud that it is public law currently.
And one of the things that was great with that is that they were able to come to us and say, this is what we want to do. How can we do it so that we don't, they knew we were the people that understood the statute, the laws around adult education from a federal perspective. And so we were able to guide them and guide in developing this program so that everybody stayed in compliance.
And really the piece that ties it all together with the partnership and everything is just the collaboration and the communication, mutual respect, but we are able to assist getting valuable information out to all of our members that might not make it down the pipeline otherwise. This includes our social media efforts where we share information from the state. So the time and energy doesn't always allow them to do that, but IAACE can. And the communication, not only on our website, but our Facebook and our Twitter, allow us to push that information out, not only advocating, but communicating, and that balance between all of that is really what makes the partnership work. Marilyn?
So just in closing, I want to encourage any of you that might not have great relationships with between the state organization and the state leadership of adult education, that you can build those relationships. It takes time, it takes trust, and it takes a lot of communication, but it can be done.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I just want to thank you so much for taking time to do that. Don, did you want to share a few words?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And you know, one of the reasons why we wanted to take some time to talk about these partnerships is because really these two states in particular, Arizona and Indiana, have really demonstrated the ability to partner well for professional development, for information, and even for advocacy. And you know, so these, particularly during COVID, as was mentioned with Indiana. And what's great about these partnerships is, as Cheryl mentioned in the beginning, that there are some things that the state office just simply cannot do, but that can be done through the membership association, the state association, and so on. And so really, you know, we want to get people to be thinking about the need to collaborate within states, but also even across states. And so one of the things that COABE does, and we, in partnership with NASDAE, is we put together a website and a platform called Educate and Elevate. And through Educate and Elevate, we have been able to successfully launch different national campaigns as it relates to adult education pending legislation and funding and other issues and so on through the years. And you know, through those efforts, we have also and we also offer an option for states and state associations. We will assist them in developing campaigns that are specific to their states. And it really is it's an opportunity for a very simple system where you click and you can send emails to your state legislators, your state officials, and so on, and at the national level as well. And to date, since Educate and Elevate has been running, we have had upwards of 142,000 connections that have been made between adult education teachers, administrators, students, and legislators and decision makers at the federal and national level. And so it's a very important tool. It's at educateandelevate.org. You definitely want to check that out. Now, for COABE, we actually work with a group called Penn Hill Group. And Penn Hill Group is based in DC, and they are a group that is helping us to understand the different legislation that is happening and the implications of the legislation and different funding packages and those types of things, so that we can send out legislative alerts and they help us to organize legislative alerts to our membership to keep adult education on the forefront of the minds of the decision makers and so on. We've been working with Penn Hill Group for just about a year now, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce Danica Petrosius, who is the lead of Penn Hill Group. She and her team have just done a wonderful, wonderful job over this past year in understanding adult education and helping COABE to organize different e-blasts and outreach campaigns to legislators, and also helped us with our with our Capitol Hill days that we have had. We actually had one in the fall, which was on the Hill, and our spring one, because of COVID, became Advocacy April. And so we actually worked very hard with them. So I'm going to turn it over to Danica and have her speak just a little bit about really the need for advocacy. Danica?
Yeah, hi everybody. This is Donica Petrosius, and my colleague Michelle McLaughlin will come on too in a bit. But so glad to be here. And we thought we would just spend a little bit of time updating what's going on federally, and this really illustrates the work you all have been doing together. We've seen, that your collective advocacy is making a difference, and in the prior years, we've seen your appropriations go increasing for adult education federally, go up. We're also seeing that there's movement forward for adult education in the moment right now. As you know, there is so much going on federally right now in response to COVID. We're also moving our appropriations bill for the next cycle. And so we thought it would be good to give you a little update and then to talk about how you can help make a difference at the federal level too. So for the congressional calendar, we have the House of Representatives actually is in session for the month of July, and the Senate is in their home states on recess until July 17th. And then they'll be back doing work. Both chambers plan to take recess in August, and it's important to remember, though, that when congressional offices are on recess or they're in session in District of Columbia, they're all still working. They're either working in DC or they're working in their home states, and the staff across the board is always working. So they are ready to receive and hear your advocacy and your issues and the information you have to share. And I just want to echo something that Indiana was talking about. I can't underscore how relationships and trust matter too at the federal level. Part of why we do ongoing advocacy and part why COABE is continuously pushing year after year to have our voices heard is that as you build relationships with congressional staff and the members, the more action we're able to take with them. And so we have the other thing happening this year, which is the elections, and not necessarily that you have to get involved in elections, but as you know, elections can mean turnover and they can mean transitions. And so paying attention at the local, state, and federal level to elections of who's going to be staffing the new people coming in, whether it's a governor or a congressman, who's going to be making decisions, who are the people closest to them, and making sure you're keeping relationships, building them with all people across all of those pieces is really, really important. One of the things we want to sort of talk about, two big pieces that we are collectively working on. One is your FY21, which is the fiscal year that begins October 1st, ask for increased adult education funding. And the other is funding and flexibility as it relates to COVID response. So the first piece, quickly to update, is that the FY21 appropriation is moving. The House of Representatives plans to start to be working and marking up their appropriations committee bills this week. We at least now expect the bill that includes adult education, which is Labor HHS as shorthand, Labor, Health and Human Services and Education, to be marked up tomorrow. And the Senate is sort of stuck. What we expect, which you've seen in previous years, is that ultimately the House and Senate will sort of get stalled on FY21, and we will see a continuing resolution after sometime done in September to take us through the election. So you'll be funded at current levels for some period of time, and we expect in the lame duck, likely December, that there will be some kind of final agreement on FY21 appropriations. So our work as it relates to that is really to continue to push from now all fall for that increase for FY21, and we'll get into the specific ask a little later. The COVID relief update is, as you remember, 3 COVID packages have passed. The most recent one, called the CARES Act, has the most money related for education type purposes. There was not specific dedicated funding for adult education in that package, but it did allow adult education to be one of the uses of funds at the state level. So that's also another good example of where the federal and state advocacy interact. So while there wasn't dedicated funding at the federal level, there could be advocacy at the state level to try to direct some of those resources for adult education. And those are ongoing opportunities we'll continue to keep you updated on. What now we're contemplating is what we're calling a fourth package. The House has passed something they're calling the HEROES Act, which is the Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions Act. That has trillions of dollars in it. It does not have dedicated funding for adult education, but it does have specific education funding writ large, and there's a lot of flexibility within that. The Senate Democrats have introduced a bill led by Senator Schumer and Senator Murray that is their version of what this COVID package 4 could look like. And that does include adult education funding. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about this one. So where the HEROES Act did not have specific adult education funding, but allows for funding, uses that funding. We're very excited because your voices were very much heard in the Senate, that this sort of marker that the Senate Democrats put down includes that $1 billion dedicated for adult education. And that within that $1 billion, there's $100 million set aside for correctional education funding. So this is really, really important. That you know, while some of the early COVID packages have not included specific funding for adult education, we're making progress. This does not mean that it's a done deal. We have a lot of work to do, but this month of July is key advocacy time to try to convince both the House and Senate leaders that when they come together to make a deal, that $1 billion for adult education needs to be in there. And now we have something to point to that shows that some elected members agree with us. And that is a really, really powerful tool. And it would not have happened if we hadn't been pushing for the last few months around this. The context as we move forward in all this is important. I touched on it, but just to be really clear, the House has this bill that includes, you know, $90 billion in state stabilization funds, some of which can be used for adult education. The Senate Democrats, and that's a House Democrat bill, but because the House is the majority, they were able to pass that. That is actually passed the House. The Democrats in the Senate introduced a bill that has $1 billion in it for adult education. The Republican leadership in the Senate has not made a bill, or has not passed it, or has not introduced something that would say what their stake in the ground is. We don't expect them to do that. So right now we have the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats having a strong stake, the 7 Democrats having that $1 billion. And what they're all gonna do is come together and try to hash out a deal. And we wanna make sure that our $1 billion is on that deal table. Michelle, I'm gonna turn it to you to talk about our ask. And as we go forward, we really expect the House and Senate to be negotiating this fourth package in July, leading up to the recess in August. And we really do expect them to finalize something in late July, early August around a next COVID relief package.
Thanks, Donica. And I just want to echo that, you know, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are in the Senate without your efforts. So all of the action alerts that we work with Don and Sharon to put together, and that you all then in turn send out to your members of Congress, it really has made a difference. So as Donica said, you know, the ask is this $1 billion in dedicated funding. We have framed it in part around needing extra resources to move to online programming. As you well know better than us, you know, there's a lot of transition going on since classes in most locations are not able to meet in person. And so we talked a lot about, in the letters that we put together, we talk about those costs and why we need additional funding for that. And then also to prepare for increased demand, because we know from the last recession, our experience in the last recession, that enrollments often go up. So we expect to see an increase in student demand. The other thing that we are hoping to see in a final deal between the House and the Senate is some sort of flexibility on the Title II testing requirements related to WIOA. Again, as you well know, the adult education system is not really able to administer tests right now for basic education and English language proficiency. We also know that some of the outside providers like the GED are not offering tests widely as far as we know. And these tests, again, are part of the WIOA Title II accountability. So in the letters that we have been sending and that you have been sending to Congress, we have mentioned wanting to have this kind of flexible and testing requirements, very similar to what the K-12 system received. For those of you who have children or just are following what's going on in the K-12 system, you know that the high stakes state assessments were not administered this past spring, and really states are already positioning themselves, and some have already asked to waive those testing requirements again for next year. So we're using that as, the same type of logic that the adult system needs, that same type of flexibility. So there's the $1 billion ask, there's the Title II testing ask. And then also, as we mentioned earlier, the regular Senate appropriations process continues tomorrow. House appropriations the markup for the labor H bill will be tomorrow. Senate, we'll see what happens. But the time is now. I know you've had a lot of change. You've had to move your conference around, and I know it's been a lot of work for everyone. But the great news is that, there's a markup this week. The Senate and the House are working together right now to figure out what the next COVID relief package looks like. So you are really well positioned to influence that process. So thank you for all that you've done thus far. We'll just ask a little bit more of everyone to get us to the finish line, and I'll turn it back over to Don and Sharon.
Great, thank you so much. I truly appreciate that update from our friends at Penn Hill Group. And we kind of also want to make the point that, yes, this federal lobbying, or I guess it's advocacy and visibility, is so important, but there's also at the local and state level, there's a real need to be visible. So I mention this because COABE is that resource to help you at the local and state level. We're here to be a thinking partner for you. We're here to help you organize. We're here to support you. And there's a number of other state associations like you that they would also like a thinking partner. They would like to come together and strategize and talk about what's working at the state level, what's not, what should we do differently. So I just mentioned that because we truly are here for you. We know that funding is so important. It's what keeps our doors open. And when we came together as a field, for the very first time, as far as back as we could remember, not only was the funding not cut, but we saw $75 million added. And now we're looking at a potential for it as well as the $692 million. So now truly is our time. I also just want to mention that there's a lot of resources. If you go to www.educateandelevate.org, that's our award-winning public awareness campaign. There's a lot of tools there for you, but you can also contact us at advocacy@coabe.org if you have specific questions, or if you have anything that you need help with at the state level in terms of advocacy, or if you're having some difficulty sort of rallying the troops for this federal level advocacy. So we have this Ignite software that a few people have mentioned so far. It's that 3-click software so that you can even see who's being contacted, what legislators are receiving those emails, who's reaching out from your state. It's actually really amazing when you start looking at, sometimes it's a few people who reach out repeatedly that make that big impact. So sometimes you don't need like a ton of people, you just need some dedicated individuals who pick up the phone and call or send out that email. We have a toolkit for state associations. I'm happy to share that with you. That's also on our educateandelevate.org website. And we really love working closely with our friends NASDAE, the state directors, because we know it's super valuable to the field. And we're really thankful for those that have joined us today from Indiana and from IAACE, and also from all there in Arizona, because they're able to showcase how well these state associations and state directors are working together. So with this, I want to say that, we've got some really important times ahead of us. Super important to be able to show that we're able to work together for the good of the field as we're looking at these potential increases for us versus reductions of funds at the state level and at the national level. So Regina is monitoring the chat box. If you want to leave a question there for us, we're happy to take it. But in the meantime, I just want to encourage everybody, if you've not done so yet, it's a great opportunity to see the National Awards Ceremony live July 8th from 4:30 to 5:30. One of the state directors actually will be recognized. Anson Green will be there as the Administrator of the Year. And that is actually emceed by our very own Dr. Don Finn. And then on June 7th from 3 to 4, we have our Town Hall for All. That's an opportunity for you to get your questions answered by COABE leadership. So I encourage you to join us for that. And we want to then thank Pearson, who's generously sponsored this event and this meeting. And then I'd like to turn this over to Dr. Don Finn to close us out.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And again, I just want to express my appreciation for our panelists today for really helping to give an understanding really of the effectiveness of partnerships between the state associations and state directors. Again, as Sharon pointed out, the Educate and Elevate platform is something that is a wonderful way to have a wide reach. And with help from our friends at the Penn Hill Group, Donica and team, we really, they help to keep us on the cutting edge of information and so on. Don't forget that you can also contact us at COABE if you are a state director, state association leader, and you are in need of putting together a state focused program as well. So I want to thank everybody so much for their time, for joining us today. Definitely, please don't forget about the awards ceremony tomorrow, and continue to enjoy the rest of the conference. Until next time, take care.